welcome to the professional development training about unpacking child and adolescent stress. What a great time for us to explore the needs of children and adolescents during remote learning while we are in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm so glad that you could be here. My name is Nicole Terhune. I am a master's level alcohol and drug counselor as well as a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I have a private practice where I primarily specialize in working with adolescents, and I'm also contracted with Oyster River Cooperative School District, where I am working with adolescents and younger elementary children as well. I'm providing this training for you because I am very passionate about this topic. So if you're here because you're passionate about it too, awesome. If you're looking to learn more, that's excellent too. You'll see there's a picture of me there. That's me. Hello. If you've never met me, please drop me an email, introduce yourself. I would love to hear from you. If you know who I am, thank you for your support and passion in working with children. And the format of this training will be a PowerPoint presentation, so you can watch it and pause, take notes. I am available by email if you have any questions. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy and we will get started. Let me start first by giving you an overview of what the training will cover. I'll be talking about how to identify stress in children and adolescents, how stress works in the physical body, how anxiety can be helpful, how to manage anxiety, and some of the top stressors for children and adolescents, the impacts of anxiety on the body, and how to support students who are stressed. And as I mentioned, this can also be applied to working with your own children, and or if you are a therapist or clinician, this will also cover how to work with clients who are experiencing stress and anxiety as well. Here's a list of some of the indicators that a child or adolescent may be feeling stressed. These are not all of the indicators, but here's a list of some of the major ones. Some of their stress may come off as being agitated, tired. They may isolate themselves. They may report a change in appetite, such as suppressing or overeating. They might be experiencing loneliness due to isolating themselves. Sometimes I've had clients share with me that there's great pressure in their chest, which is understandable because the body is trying to produce more cortisol to protect them, which in turn, it can be very scary to not know what anxiety is and have that pressure in their chest because it's can be very concerning if you don't know what it is. I've had clients share with me that they felt lightheaded. We know that substance use can be a coping skill for managing stress. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I know it happens. And we also might be seeing changes in mood. So if you know the child and you're seeing a significant change in their mood or any of these behaviors, you might take that as an indicator. Oh, okay, they might be stressed out. And we want to watch for some of those signs. Now, in order to be able to detect these signs and indicators, we do have to recognize our own stress. It's so important that we can reflect on ourselves and know when we're stressed and actually know the indicators of where our stress is coming from and the source of our stress so that we are taking care of ourselves and engaging in self-care because life can be stressful and it's not going to go away. I cannot sit here and say that we're going to fix all of our children's stress and anxiety. That's not possible. But we're going to learn how to deal with it when it comes. So as adults, you can kind of reflect back on your life and say, well, what have I been doing for myself to help with my own stressors? And how do I find ways to relax? And that might not be what works for everybody. But if you know yourself and you know the indicators, you might be able to see that in someone else, especially if you are an avid practitioner of practicing self care. So, yes, you need to find your inner peace within those moments of, a classroom either seeming like things are out of control, or at home right now, many of you have children, and it was a huge shift for many people as they're trying to work and their children are trying to remote learn, that we can still find balance in the chaos that's going on outside, because we can't control all of it, and sometimes kids need to get their energy out, get their stress out, and then they'll be ready to work. Hopefully, that's the hope. Let's talk a little bit about the stress brain loop. If you've never seen this before, I think it's a really great illustration of how stress works in the brain. You'll notice if someone is experiencing increased stress that it's difficult to focus. Their perception can sometimes be off. Memory can be challenging, especially short term. Learning anything new can seem impossible. And searching for words, if you're talking and you're like, I can't even think of the word I'm about to say right now. It's that definitely can happen, especially I think in our adult lives. And then chronic stress, we would notice adolescents maybe losing sleep, poor nutrition, emotional distress. So glucocorticoids are going to increase, and there will be cellular changes in the hippocampus, and then there will be a decreased regulation of cortisol. So we might see, if somebody's experiencing stress or anxiety, you've heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response. That's something that we don't know necessarily what each kid is going to represent. Like, we don't know if they're going to be in fight mode or run away or just freeze up if they're stressed, but that's something just to watch out for. It can depend on their experiences of trauma in their life or other stressful experiences, if they are going to shut down in times of stress, or if they're going to try and fight it or run away from it. It's all kind of based on the child's experience. And we do see that there can be an emotional response to stress, of course. I think that would be definitely some changes in mood and behavior, maybe being extra angry or agitated, tearful, crying, feeling very upset. That is something to watch out for. And the physical response might be not feeling well, actually reporting that they feel sick. They might get headaches, they might feel dizzy, they might have a stomach ache, they might have all of the above. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not telling you to assess a kid's physical, medical challenges, but what I'm saying is, if you're working with a student and they're having a hard time and they're saying they don't feel well, they may not recognize that their illness is due to stress or anxiety. Stress can cause a lot of medical problems if it goes untreated, and we will talk about that more. What is cortisol? Cortisol is just the neatest thing. I'm so fascinated by cortisol. It's our natural built-in alarm system, and it is going to try and help protect your body when you're feeling stressed. So it's the body's main stress hormone, and it works in certain parts of your brain to control mood, motivation, and fear. It's what's going to try and tell us that in a moment when we're feeling unsafe or a child is feeling unsafe and they're having a fear response, the cortisol is going to go up to try and protect them. And it's important to teach them how that actually works in their body. The cortisol is going to use up carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to help give you that energy. It is going to keep inflammation down. It regulates blood pressure, increases blood sugar. It can control your sleep wake cycle, and it boosts energy so you can handle stress and restore balance, which is so awesome, but not awesome for our students or children who find that they're stressed or fearful about something and they have this increased energy when there's nothing to be afraid of at all. For example, like public speaking, and they might be experiencing this stress and anxiety in such a heightened way that they become ill and not be able to function. If their body is not producing too much cortisol, they might feel nervous and get through the presentation and then restore balance after. It all just sort of depends on their body and how their body is responding. Now, too much cortisol is not good. We have seen in research and in many studies that too much cortisol, so somebody who's experiencing stress and their body responds with more cortisol than somebody else who might be experiencing that same stressor, could have some greater health risks than somebody who's not experiencing this heightened level of cortisol. It's kind of a mix of all these chemical reactions in the body. So that may come out as weight gain, bruises on the skin, muscle weakness, diabetes, and the list goes on. So it's really something that we have to be working with children when they're young to teach them how to regulate and notice. I mean, that's like the key right there, is to notice when they are stressed and to figure out how they're going to put that to good use, because we want to make sure or help them understand what anxiety is. So when stress is starting to lead to anxiety, that's when we're like, okay, we just want to keep our eye on where this is going, what their symptoms are. Is the anxiety controllable, or is it getting really bad where they're not able to function on a day-to-day basis and need some treatment? So the amygdala creates or prepares the fight, flight, or freeze response, which we talked about. It can actually be bad to avoid anxiety, because knowing what we're fearful of or knowing what's causing us worries is an opportunity for learning, really, and for figuring out how to find self-care and manage our personal health and well-being, and teaching children and adolescents that we don't want to run from the anxiety, because then it comes back, 10 times worse. We've all done that. We don't listen to our body, and we let it go for a couple days, and then we end up exhausted and we wonder why. It's the weekend and we've been running on high, and Saturday comes and we're done. We're depleted. We don't want our children and adolescents to be experiencing that. We want them to enjoy their days off, especially during this pandemic. We want them to have some time each day for themselves, that they can enjoy themselves and, think about, okay, what was causing me some anxiety today? Is it my assignments are building up and I just don't want to do them? So they're having that, that would probably be the flight response. So not responding to the work, not doing the work, and then it all piles up, and then they're like completely stressed out and shut down and don't know where to start. But that, we do have to make sure that we teach kids not to avoid the anxiety and to take care of it when it's happening. So teach them about self-care, which we'll talk about more later on. And then, letting children and adolescents know there's nothing wrong with having anxiety. There really isn't. And if we can give them permission that they don't have to fight it, they really don't, that it's okay. And even as adults, letting them know, like, you know what, sometimes I get stressed out or sometimes I feel anxious. That's just a very important skill for them to understand. And then, as I said before the start of this slide, we really want to evaluate the impact of anxiety on someone's life. And what I mean by that is, are we getting to the point with this student or child that they are becoming ill because of their anxiety, or they are really just not completing their schoolwork, their grades are falling apart? That's when we want to seek some professional help. We want to get them professional help and assessed. So you could definitely start with recommending to a parent that the child go to their primary care physician and be evaluated, and or parents could look into getting the child a therapist and have an assessment done. But we really want to make sure that we're reaching out to kids and families and letting them know, because anxiety can get in the way, and it really, if it goes untreated and isn't managed, it can really negatively impact someone's life. This video is awesome. I cannot get the video to play in this training. However, on your own time, if you want to check it out, it's called Anxiety Explained, and it specifically goes over anxiety for adolescents, but could definitely be applied to the earlier stages of childhood. It goes through teaching teens how anxiety is normal biological response called fight, flight, or freeze. And those can get triggered by and inappropriately in our modern world. So it goes through talking about evolution in a way, and how when we were hunting, like if we needed to run away from a bear or something, we need that anxiety. We need it to protect ourselves. But now we're living in a more modern life, and we don't always need that fight, flight, or freeze response. But again, that goes back to if the child has experienced any trauma, things are going to be a little bit more heightened for this student or child, especially if they have not received treatment for trauma, or they have any undiagnosed mental health challenges or learning challenges. It will heighten this fight, flight, or freeze response. So if you go to anxietycanada.com, you can find that video. It's also on YouTube. Definitely write that down and check it out. If you don't catch that, make sure you send me an email and I will share the video with you. I told you we were going to talk about how to manage anxiety. So, notice it. You've heard me say that. Name it to tame it. Perfect example here when I'm going to do a little self-disclosure. When I was a teenager, I remember I was working a lot. I was in college, and I started feeling really sick. And I went to the doctors, and they had tested me for all these different things. And then it comes back that, oh, you have anxiety. And I'm like, wow, why didn't anyone tell me this before? That makes perfect sense. And I started feeling better just because I wasn't worried anymore that I was sick or there was something wrong with me. It made perfect sense that, yes, I'm anxious. I'm trying to graduate from college, and I'm working and managing life as a young adult. So it made perfect sense to me. But growing up, I never knew that I had been experiencing anxiety. So that's what I mean by name it to tame it. Teaching coping strategies, whether that is, teaching a student or your child to take breaks, um, to call somebody, to work on a distraction skill if they're feeling upset or frustrated. And this isn't to ignore the anxiety, it's just to take a moment, take a breath, walk away, figure out what are my coping skills before the anxiety gets bad. So, coping strategies and self care, we don't want to teach children just to use those things like when you're feeling stressed. When they're feeling stressed, if it's bad, they're trying to regulate their breathing. Sure, let's work on some deep breathing. Let's take a minute and stop what you're doing. But I'm talking about, self care outside of that feeling of anxiety. So, regular exercise and eating well and taking care of their body. So, when they do experience stress, their mind has already recreated these healthy neural pathways that this person, this child or adolescent, can deal with stress a little bit better. And it's proven to work. Meditation is definitely very helpful, but it's not for everyone. And there are different versions of meditation. So you can meditate by journaling, by reading something. I think kids might enjoy doing something more active rather than sitting there and being with their thoughts, which can be very effective. You got to let those thoughts go. I also have on here medication. Now, medication isn't necessarily the answer for all anxiety. It's an option, right? It can be used in combination with therapy and can be a great way to sort of break that cycle if someone has experienced a great deal of anxiety that has been impacting their life, like I had shared with you, that they cannot function. They really are just having panic attacks multiple times a week. That's what I'm talking about there. When it becomes from moderate to severe, we really want to make sure this person is seeing a doctor and getting the help that they need in combination with therapy. So eventually, maybe they are weaning off the medication or coming off the medication. The therapy is what's going to help a child to understand, again, why their stressors are what they are and what their stressors are and what they experience for anxiety and how that comes out in their life and the things that they had been through in their childhood or something that's going on within their home, in their current life. Maybe parents are getting divorced or even with the coronavirus, I have a lot of clients who have been experiencing a great deal of anxiety just due to like the time of year that this is happening. We're sort of closing out the end of the school year and not returning to school. So there's a lot of grief and loss that my clients are experiencing and just are having a hard time coming to terms with that and understanding that because we're living it right now. They're living it. They see that they're mostly okay, but it's kind of hard to understand where the fears and grief and loss is coming from. So all of these different ways of managing anxiety can be helpful in combination. It just really depends on the kid and the family and the adolescent, what works best for them. We can't sit here and prescribe one thing for one person. We have to look at the whole child and evaluate what that child needs. And especially with adolescents, I would recommend having that conversation with them as a parent or encourage parents if you're a teacher and you're meeting with parents to have that conversation with their child. What are some ways we can work on managing your anxiety or teach you to do that? So, and what are the top stressors for children and youth? I bet you can guess. Okay, top stressors for children and youth: COVID-19, family, friendship and relationships, school, mental health, social media, going out with friends. I should add social distancing there. Getting a job, driver's education, and transitions, turning 18, and what happens next. All right, let's dive into COVID-19 and the stressors. Unexpected changes. So many unexpected changes happened when our children were not returning to school. We don't know what was going on inside their homes and what their families might be struggling with and what their financial situation may have been. So, not having access to school lunches and not having access to those people they were in contact with daily, teachers, counselors, just that smile in the hallway is a very, very big change for our children. Cancellations, there were many events and activities that had been canceled, postponed. Many of those things we didn't know about for quite some time, and now there's a little bit more clarity with school being canceled till the end of the year, and most, all sporting events. We are not sure when those will restart. Trauma from COVID-19. So the trauma could be a parent is working on the front lines and living in a camper because they are concerned about contaminating their family or their patients. If a family has experienced a loss of a loved one and has not been able to attend funeral services, that is a reality for some. As I mentioned, there could be financial stressors. Many people have lost their jobs or were laid off for the time being and not receiving a steady income. Yes, there is the opportunity to apply for unemployment. However, that may not be enough, and that may have caused a delay in receiving funds. Many children rely on school for, as I mentioned, I think food and overall wellness and having access to a nurse's office and so many different things. Also, some stressors might come from parents having conflicting views about the pandemic. Yes, it is definitely true that you could have one parent under or overreacting, which either of those responses are not right or wrong. It's just a response within the family. So there can definitely be some stressors there, especially for children who are having to social distance and miss their friends and not understanding at those younger ages why social distancing was important or is important at this time. And adolescents who want to be going out, and parents are having to stand firm with the stay-at-home orders, can be a source of conflict and stress in the family. Speaking of family stressors, so there are many reasons a child or an adolescent might be stressed within their family, but there could be health concerns in the family, working parents who have busy schedules and not as available, finances, addiction, mental health. Those are all things that can definitely impact stressors within a family, whether treated or untreated. And there's so many different factors here that kids can be experiencing different emotions and family dynamics. Friendships and relationships, those aren't stressful at all. Well, they shouldn't be, but they definitely are for kids and adolescents. They are trying to learn and figure out what relationships are supportive, whether that be adults in their lives, teachers, coaches, healthy versus unhealthy relationships, boundaries in relationships and friendships, and romantic relationships versus friends. Now, this takes time for them to learn to navigate what they are going off and creating these friendships and relationships is what they've already learned. So, if a student or a child is growing up in a stressful home, they might actually be seeking out stressful relationships because that's what they know, that's what they think is right. They might be um, growing up in a healthy home environment and making friends and having boundaries is easy for them. It's different for every kid, but just something to consider depending on the developmental stages in a child's life, that this could be a great source of stress and anxiety for some kiddos. School stressors, well, that has changed a lot. We're looking at stressors that have happened from remote learning. I mean, we've got some kids who are definitely have taken off with this remote learning and they're really into it, all about it. We've got kids who are struggling with it and it is just not the right learning environment for them. They have disruptions in the home, trouble with focusing and being disciplined to their academics. It's a really challenging time to assess any sort of educational growth. However, I'm so fascinated with how much teachers are doing and how supportive our community has been, and hopefully your community, in helping parents and helping caregivers and, being there for each other, for staff and community members through the challenges of this change in education. And I have got to say, we have definitely learned some new things and new ways to deliver information to kids. So, it's no more snow days. We will be remote learning. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's definitely a possibility, but I know we like those snow days to relax, right? Okay. Organization. Organization can be very hard for some of those kids who have challenges with executive functioning. And I'm just talking about, I'm not necessarily talking about having their papers in the right binder. I'm talking about writing a to-do list and knowing what day it is and what's the date and using a planner and keeping track of their own agenda. That should start at a young age so that they can plan and prepare for their day, their week, and that can definitely help reduce anxiety and give some kids clarity. I know a lot of families have a calendar at home where they can see their activities for the week, and it's the same thing that we do in a school. We have there's a post of assignments, a post of what your schedule is. And that is something I've been recommending to some of my clients. Print out your remote learning schedule. Write out a schedule for yourself. And I know there's been many professionals who put together daily schedules, which I think were awesome because it definitely includes a lunch break, getting outside, taking breaks. Those are really awesome things to do. Academics, yep, we've got students and kids who have challenges with learning. Maybe it's a learning disability. Maybe they're experiencing some mental health symptoms of trauma and flashbacks or stress and anxiety or depression. And it is very difficult for them to even complete an assignment or even think about going forward with something academic. Access to resources. Well, that's definitely prevalent right now in our lives. But again, the schools have worked really hard to make sure every child has what they need, whether that be laptops, pen, paper, any sort of supplies. That has been a priority, I think, in most schools, just to make sure every learner had what they need. But also, when kids are in school, having access to resources and things that they need, such as how to navigate from class to class or how to navigate online check-ins with teachers and postings and how to check their grades even. That's important, and how that works, like that it might not be automatically updated, and for them to kind of understand that learning curve. um, worried about what is happening. I think we've kind of addressed that a lot, just about with school, kind of what to expect in the future in our transition back to brick and mortar and being in a physical classroom. We don't know what that is going to look like. Transitions can be very challenging for students at high risk. So 8th graders going into 9th grade, if that is a new school transition for them, they are definitely at high risk of increased mental health challenges, as well as substance use and negative coping skills. Our adolescents who are seniors, they are at high risk because they are transitioning into their adult independent lives, going into college or staying, taking a gap year, being at home, and we'll get into that as well. Stressors with mental health. You've heard me mention that it can be a great deal of stress when a child has an undiagnosed mental health symptom, or undiagnosed mental health challenge, which I think goes back to name it to tame it. If they don't know why they're sad or down and they've been experiencing depression and that's going untreated, that can take a big toll on somebody. Understanding mental wellness and self-care and creating a healthy home environment. Some kids are not in a healthy home environment, and some kids don't understand or know what self-care is. And as teachers and role models, again, we can implement those things in a classroom. Even if it's, you're working with a kid who's stressed and you say, you know what, let's take a minute, tell me a joke. It's okay to show them that we can veer off the road sometimes. I have a client who gets anxious when he's driving because he's afraid he's going to take a wrong turn. And so we talked about, hey, you know what? If you're worried about taking a wrong turn, pull off the road for a minute and look at your navigation system, look at your GPS, become familiar, get back on the road. And if you're questioning yourself again, you can pull off, take a minute, check things out. So using that in our own personal lives, sometimes we really do just need to pull over, take a break, and then check back in with ourselves. And as adults, we need to role model that for students and our children. Social media, there are some really fake things out there that children are watching and seeing, and they don't even realize that things that get posted are not someone's real life, right? It can be kind of disturbing, but there are lots of negative messages out there, negative influences. Encourage them to follow positive posts on TikTok or whatever they're using, Instagram, Snapchat. Encourage that they are immersing themselves with positive social media. And you can do that as a teacher. You can do that as a professional working with a student, because it can come up in conversations, right? You might walk by them and see something on their phone and be like, oh, wow, what was that? I don't know. Don't ask them. Never mind. And one thing that I encourage families to do is take a inventory of how much screen time you've been using in a week, so you can see that On an iPhone, I'm sure other phones do this as well, you can track how many hours you've been on your phone per day. So you could encourage families to have like a competition, like, oh, who used less screen time this week? They get a prize, they get the cupcakes. Encouraging families to have family free screen time. So, oh, on Saturdays from, depends, you can pick any time, but 10 to noon, we're not on our phones and we're out walking as a family or playing a game together. Those are great ways to reduce stress. Staying connected. This slide I had put together for parents, just being aware and how they can keep adolescents safe, because sometimes they do want us as parents or as caregivers or teachers to set limits, right? Like, all right, put your phones away. We're going to have some solitude. I know you might be using it for a calculator, but just focus on this for a minute, or let's try and do it this way, just to implement that they can create some balance, because they can't necessarily ignore the text message that comes up or the post that a friend just shared with them. But also, I have to say, technology has been an amazing tool lately, right? Like, look at us. We are remote working and learning, and I think it's really amazing how everyone is just kind of jumping right in, and it's harder for others and easier for some, but especially the students and kids, they're like, hopefully, most of them are navigating this pretty well. The technology piece is what I mean, but their phones are a source of communicating with each other. I can't tell you how many times I've met with a client and they're telling me, oh, I'm worried about my friend. And they're like, oh, okay, I just checked in on them. They're okay. It's a perfect tool for them to be able to chat with each other. I did put some pictures on here of the Bark app. So that's $9 a month. It alerts parents if there are safety concerns with their child. If the child has posted anything about intent to harm themselves or someone else, or they're experiencing bullying, this is a great app for parents. I've read good feedback about it. I've not tried it myself, but I've read good things about it. $9 a month, not too bad. But if a kiddo has given a parent a reason to invade their privacy, then I definitely tell parents, yeah, you can look through their phone because they have given you a reason to believe that they're not being safe on their phone or not being appropriate. And then there's the Life 360 app, which allows families to see where the other person is, and when the teenagers are where they're supposed to be, and different ways to connect with each other. So those are some good resources for parents. Now, social distancing and going out with friends. Again, I had talked about how that was very complicated and still is for many of our children and adolescents. I mean, I know some kids who are still working, so they are seeing their friends at work. I know some kids who are pretty depressed because they aren't able to see their friends. It's really tricky. If they want to do something outside, I wish we could tell them, like, yeah, go for it, but there's just no guarantee that they're necessarily going to keep themselves. We have the 6 feet order, so we don't necessarily know if that would be possible, especially for the younger ones. But I just say it's up to the family to decide how they're going to implement social distancing. That's not for us to judge. That's not for us to say or give advice about. I recently had a client ask me if what I thought about him going and meeting up with his friends, and it's like, dude, I can't tell you what to do, but I can give you some scenarios and thoughts, and you decide as a family what's best for your family. Curfews. Be clear about when you want your children to be home and try not to give too much leeway with that. They want you to be clear. Phone calls. What do I mean by that? So, when we're talking about adolescents or kids who are going to each other's homes, I think it's definitely okay as a parent to call the other parents and find out who's going to be there, what's going on. This can be a stressor for many kids. Maybe they're uncomfortable about going to someone's house and maybe they don't really want to go. So you have to be that gatekeeper for them and help them navigate that and maybe get them out of it if they don't want to go. Who are they with? What are they doing? Where are they going? And like I mentioned, confirming with maybe other friends or parents and adults where they are. Because when parents are stressed about where their kids are, that just definitely causes some stress for the child. Okay, gaining independence. The children are getting older. They are working age. Where can they apply? Well, there are many adolescents and youth who are still working. I have some kids who are working at Market Basket and Wendy's. But these are the places that typically hire 15 and 16-year-olds. And then I put a picture on there of someone walking a dog because dog walking is a great idea for adolescents who are looking for a job. So employment can be a great stressor because, they don't want to make phone calls to find out if their application has been received, or they don't necessarily want to make phone calls about, is McDonald's hiring? Sometimes they just don't like to talk on the phone. Maybe they are anxious about how to apply online. Getting a work permit, that's something they can do through their school. Let's see, resume. So resume is usually completed at school as well, but definitely a stressor for some kids who are going to be leaving, going to college. It's really a great idea for them to have a resume started if they have work history before they leave high school. Driver's education, there's lots of stressors with that sometimes. Financial stress, time constraints, expense of a car, expensive insurance. So we can see there's lots of stressors there, not to mention parents who are having to make sure their kids are, or I shouldn't say the parents have to make sure, but getting in those drive times, that can be really definitely stressful for kids who may not have a vehicle that they can use for drive times, or maybe it's winter and it's harder to get in those hours because it's dark out. So this can definitely be a stress for adolescents and weighing on them and something that preoccupies their mind during the school day. College applications and scholarships. That is something that counseling office usually helps out with a lot. So definitely encourage parents, families, and students to take advantage of the counseling office because they know what they're doing, hopefully. Depending on the school and your situation, I know our counseling office is absolutely incredible. So I really commend them. They know a lot about college admissions, and I don't know very much about that at all. Educating parents and being respectful of kids who are taking a gap year, or they want to work for a year because they have financial responsibilities, or some of those kids who are anxious about going to college and independent living. We know some kids are so ready for it, but some are not. Let's talk about the health effects of anxiety on the body. How's everyone doing? Are you with me? We're doing awesome. There are some great health effects. Not great, it's not good, but when anxiety is going unmanaged, what we would notice in children is maybe increased arguments with teachers or adults. We might notice that they're under distress. They might be coping in unhealthy ways with substance use and or self-isolating from social settings. Right, health effects of anxiety. So as I mentioned before, the negative impacts of someone whose body is producing too much cortisol and or someone who's experiencing a great deal of stress and anxiety in their life. This can lead to depression, panic attacks, headaches, irritability, a pounding heart rate, breathing problems, upset stomachs, increased blood pressure, muscle aches. These are all very common symptoms of someone experiencing a great deal of stress and anxiety. How can we support children and youth through life transitions so that they are not completely stressed? Like I said, we're not taking it all away, but we can teach them how to regulate. Using a rating scale. So that is an awesome way for us as adults who are role modeling, like, hey, what's your stress level today on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being pretty low, 10 being high. And then you can get a really good idea. If they say a 5, they're like, oh, they're in the middle. Or if they're saying a 10, we need to support them. We need to give them some support. This is a great way for parents to communicate with their children using a rating scale because it's less emotional. There's not usually a lot of arguments that go along with that. It's just simple. You're just checking in. I definitely encourage people to check in with children and adolescents about how they're feeling because sometimes they say they don't know how they're feeling, and we can help them figure that out and teach them that, you might be feeling many different ways in one day. You might be happy about something or sad and angry all at the same time. You might be stressed but excited about something in the future. It's so complicated, and we can be great support in helping adolescents to understand and relate to their emotions and encourage them to engage in self-care. Stress reducing strategies at home. And some of these things you could definitely use in a classroom. So creating a relaxing home environment. You can create a relaxing environment in a classroom by adding a lamp, or I know some classrooms probably have, for the younger grades, different chairs or book nooks, but just making the room look relaxing and encouraging children and adolescents to create their own little relaxing space at home. That's definitely something that I think we can encourage kids to do, create your own little space and sanctuary where you feel safe and comfortable. You can use a communication box. So take away that stressor of kids who don't want to come up to you and tell you some of their challenges by having a communication box. So here's a box. I'll leave some index cards. If you have something you're concerned about, please put it in the box. Please don't put emergencies in here because I don't check the box every day, but let them know maybe that you check it once a week, or if you are able to check it every day, just make sure that you explain to them, not for emergencies, unless you really know you're checking it every day. But it's a good way, again, to take the emotions out of it for the child or the adolescent, and it's a safe way for them to communicate. Having a stress code word, that's something I encourage families to use at home. So bananas, they say that word, banana, I don't know, I just came up with that. But if they say that word at home, they're letting their parent know, I'm really stressed, give me space, and walk away. I always encourage parents to lower their emotional reactions. So mirror neurons, right? When we see someone smile, that makes us smile sometimes. When we see someone is sad, that makes us feel sad. And as parents, or teachers, or adults, if we seem stressed out, the kids see that. They pick up on that. They know, and they're going to feel stressed just by looking at us. And it's all right sometimes, but we just have to be aware of it. Being stable, I think, like showing our ability to reduce our anxiety and our own stress allows children to trust us and feel like, they can see we're stable and that we're able to take care of ourselves so that we can then lead and take care of them. This is also a video. It's a TED Talk. So if you just go to YouTube and type in how stress affects your brain, the video talks about how stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy, which I have talked about. It's great when playing sports or can get in the way of public speaking, but could also be a motivator. If someone's feeling anxious and they get up there and they have all that energy and their adrenaline is going, maybe they'll be more motivated and be great at speaking. The video also talks about when stress is continuous in the brain, it begins to change your brain, and how chronic stress can affect brain size and structure and how it functions right down to the level of your genes. Pretty fascinating. So definitely check that out. And it's definitely something teens can watch, but it's a short video that you could watch as well. Encouraging the students that you work with that when they're starting to worry about something, just go back to the present moment, because anxiety is when we are talking or when we're thinking about the future, when we have a worry about the future. Depression is our grief and sadness about the past. And we want to encourage mindfulness and present moment thinking, which sometimes that means, just come back and put your feet on the floor and try regrounding with 5 things they see, 4 things they hear, 3 things they smell, 2 things they feel, and 1 thing they taste. And the purpose of that is to reground and distract their mind from what they're currently thinking about in regards to anything they're anxious or worried about. It brings them back to the present moment to be relaxed and ready to focus. Here are some different ways to reduce stress for children and youth. Teaching them that we accept them for who we are, we validate them, we encourage stable living. So that's some psychoeducation maybe you're providing for a parent or helping a child find resources. They need predictability in their day. They need you to listen with empathy, and they need to practice a healthy lifestyle, which we are going to talk about next. Exercise can help significantly reduce symptoms of stress and anxiety. Getting that heart rate up, it gives a message to the brain, okay, cortisol, I don't need you so much right now. You can calm down a little bit. Depending on different foods, getting the right nutrients and the correct vitamins can be a huge impact on someone's mental health, especially those who are not eating so healthy. They may actually experience increased or a greater sensation of anxiety when it's present. Sleep is so important for the growing mind. That is when our body is resetting and processing everything that we learn in a day. So for children and for adolescents, they need rest. They need their brain to shut down and go to that REM sleep where it can really regain and capture everything that they've learned in a day. We talked about mindfulness, having a practice of self-care and self-regulation, a practice of being still. When we're still and doing nothing, that's when things come to our mind that maybe in this busy life and busy world we forget about. And for them, for kids to take breaks and just take a moment to sit with themselves and do nothing. And so often I hear of my clients expressing that they're bored. Well, being bored means you're disinterested in something and that you're looking for your something to grab your attention. But we're not always in a situation where we're enjoying everything. So having a toolbox of what you can do when you're bored, or teaching kids that being bored is okay. And you can be okay with sitting for a few minutes and not knowing what you're going to do next and trusting yourself. I'm not going to play this video, but please watch this. Many of you have probably seen it, Sympathy versus Empathy by Brene Brown. Brene Brown, she talks about the best way to ease someone's pain and suffering. And it reminds us that we can only create a genuine empathetic connection if we're brave enough to really get in touch with our own fragilities, as she writes. So important for us to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy so we can be empathetic to the growing child and adolescent in our life. So what now? This is where I suggest to parents that they are giving children support. So often children and adolescents aren't really necessarily going to ask for what they need. So if you see their need of assistance, talk to them. Say, what can I do for you? Let me show you this. I will guide you in this direction. Validate them, communicate, responding without reacting. That's when, we have to keep our cool, because adolescents are hard to understand. Children are tough to understand sometimes. We don't know why they do what they do, but it happens, and they're going to make things hard for themselves, and they're not always going to do what we expect or what parents expect them to do. Which is why I encourage we are patient and loving and kind when responding. I always tell parents, lead with love, and love isn't always saying yes. Sometimes love is saying no. Here's an example of a circle of control, a great tool to teach kids about the things that are inside of their control, which can significantly reduce anxiety and stress, and what's outside of their control. If you'd like a copy of this, please email me. I will send this to you. There's also an outline of this where the child could add specific examples into things they can control and things that are outside of their control. But in general, I find this as a great reference to really understand that anxiety is also a source of things that we're trying to control, and it can be really challenging to let go and understand that the things outside of our control are how other people behave, how other people feel, and we cannot control those things. We can control our own words, our own behaviors, our own ideas and success and actions, and that's really what is inside of our control. And so when we're noticing our things outside of our control with adolescents or students, like these indicators here, we can't fix everything. We can't fix it for them. We want to. We see their suffering. We see their pain. It is hard to see them going through this. And that is why I wanted to provide this training, because when we know how to see it in kids, we can help guide them and give them the help and the resources that they need to manage their stress and anxiety, because we want them to feel better. We want them to have good lives and be successful and be the best version of themselves in each day, whether that means things are a struggle or whether that means they are doing well, but it can change from day to day. And as I mentioned, this is some of the identifiers of a child or adolescent who might be experiencing stress or anxiety, but it is not all of them. I have some resources here. Parents can go on Psychology Today to find therapists who accept their insurance and have openings and availabilities. There are parent support groups, so contact your school or local community mental health agency to find out what those parent support groups are. Self-care, so make sure that we are engaging self-care, because when we're working with children and adolescents, we really have to fill our cup first and fill our tank so that we're not running out of gas and we're not frustrated when kids are falling apart. So exercise, make sure you're taking personal time for yourself and working on hobbies. There was a handout that I actually gave with resources to parents, so if you're interested in that handout, let me know. Here's my contact information. You can contact me personally at n.terhune@outlook.com or n.terhune@orcsd.org. Thank you so much for listening to this professional development training. I hope that it has been a resource for you, and I'm so glad that you could be here and listen in, gain some information. Hopefully you walk away with something new, or you feel validated, like, yes, okay, I'm normal too. I am normal too. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer them, and take care.